Senator Keogan.
Thank you, Caoimhe. Minister, you're very welcome into the Chamber. It's the first time I've got to address you, and congratulations on your post and continued best wishes. So thank you, Minister, for taking the time this morning to discuss this issue. It is one of the most utmost importance, which will continue to impact more and more women as time goes by. We have a wonderful tradition of sport in this country, and our sportswomen are going from strength to strength, from qualifying for this summer's Hockey World Cup, Leona Maguire's rise through the world ranks, and Captain Lucy Mulhall leading the team into their first ever HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series final in Seville. This small country has been put on the map of women's sports internationally. It's a wonderful example to the girls and young women in this country, and it's worth protecting. But currently, Minister, there is a glaring issue with regards to fair competition when it comes to sports, the women's sports in Ireland, and it stems from the introduction of self-ID legislation in 2015. Through that legislation, the Irish state declared that being a woman is in fact a feeling, and that biologically reality is not particularly relevant when it comes to the business of being a woman. We were now told that men who say they are women were also women, and they had been merely born in the wrong body. The notion of bodies is important for women in many areas, but none more so than sport, and that is what I'm here to speak about today. But ministers, bodies play sport, not identities. The publicly funded lobby group Transgender Equality Network Ireland is campaigning for inclusion in sport. This is a misnomer. Men who identify as women already have a category of sport open to them, the male category. What this lobby group is actually seeking is the erasure of the single-sex female category and its replacement with a mixed-sex one. This will obliterate fair competition in women's sport and endanger female athletes in contact sports. So, Minister, do you recognise the role biological sex plays in women's sports, and what steps will be taken to preserve female sports given the danger posed by self-ID legislation? Irish sportswomen are excelling, but the support for that has not always been forthcoming. It was not that long ago that our women's soccer team were forced to change in airport toilets and return their tracksuits to share with other teams. The spectre of humiliation is never far away. But this latest attack on women's sports will have the highest impact of all. Across the pond, US President Joe Biden dismantled the Title IX provision allowing for biological males to compete in female sports. Since then, the sporting world has looked on in disbelief as a man who previously swam in the US elite men's college competition now claims to identify as a woman and has just gone on to win a set of records in 3 different events. The same individual will compete against an Irish female Olympian in collegiate competition in the coming months. So already we can see the impact this is having on our sportswomen. Strikingly, there are no examples of women who identify as men taking podium places or threatening records held by men. They are, however, examples of women who identify as men competing and succeeding on women's teams. This is entirely appropriate as they are of the same sex. Men's sports remain untouched by gender ideology. Across the world, sportsmen and women are speaking out against the erasure of women's sports. Martina Navratilova, Daley Thompson, Michael Phillips, Sharon Davis, and notably 2 bio-males who now identify as women, Caitlyn Jenner and Renee Richards. In light of this, Minister, can you confirm that you support fair competition and safety for women and girls in their chosen sport? And how do you plan to protect these rights when all single-sex provisions have been dismantled through self-ID? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Untitled.
Thank you, Senator Keogan, for raising this matter. And equality in sport is a key priority for both myself and Minister Catherine Martin. Our overall vision for women in sport is one where women have an equal opportunity to achieve their full potential while enjoying a lifelong involvement in sport. A fundamental aim of the Government's National Sports Policy 2018 to 2027 is to increase the levels of participation in sport and physical activity across the population, with a specific focus on less represented groups, including women and girls. A lot of work is happening and good progress is being made, not just in terms of increasing active participation, but also in the important areas of leadership and management roles in sport. The Women in Sport funding programme is a very important support for sporting bodies in putting programmes in place to increase women's participation in their sports and to progress their strategic objectives for women in sport. The Women in Sport funding programme is in place since 2005, and since then over €20 million has been invested to the national governing bodies of sport and the local sports partnerships across the country. In 2018, funding under this sport programme was €600,000. Last year, Sport Ireland announced an investment of €4 million for the 2 years 2021 and 2022. This significant increase in funding ensures that opportunities continue to be provided for women to participate in sport. I was pleased to secure increased funding for Sport Ireland in the budget for 2022, bringing their total current expenditure budget to over €96 million compared to €92 million last year. This will enable Sport Ireland to continue to support governing bodies and local sports partnerships in delivering programmes for all participants, male and female. There is growing momentum towards better integration of the 3 governing bodies involved in Gaelic games, the GA Ladies Football Association and the Camogie Association, and I know that the 3 organisations are working on a pathway to amalgamation. I am very supportive of such moves, which reflect much as what is happening already at a club level and would further ensure parity of treatment for female players within the Gaelic Games family. One of my priorities last year was to eliminate the funding gap that existed in grant funding for male and female Gaelic players. I am very pleased to have achieved that aim and ensured that we now have parity in terms of that grant funding. Additional funding has been provided for enhanced support of female inter-county Gaelic players on an equivalent basis to that being provided for their male counterparts, bringing the total amount available for female players in this context to €2.4 million. The aim of the National Sports Policy 2018 to 2027 is to eliminate the gender participation gap in sport entirely by 2027. The 2019 Irish Sports Monitor report showed that the gender gap in sports participation was 3.4%, narrower than any point over the past 10 years. While the Irish Sports Monitor report for the first quarter of 2021 showed that the gender gap was eliminated during the COVID-19 restrictions, the latest Sports Monitor figures for quarter 3 show that a gender gap is beginning to re-emerge as restrictions were lifted. In quarter 3, male sports participation had returned to pre-pandemic levels at 48%, while female sports participation was at 38%, 7% behind the level measured in 2019. The emergent gradient is a cause for focus and ongoing monitoring. To this end, many national governing bodies are delivering Women in Sport and Dormant Accounts funded programmes this winter, which actively target populations that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, including females, economically and socially disadvantaged communities, people with a disability and ethnic minorities. Addressing women's participation at all levels in sport is an important element of the National Sports Policy. That includes women in leadership positions such as governing bodies, and the National Sports Policy set a target of 30%, which we've increased in our Sport Action Plan to 40% gender representation on boards by the end of 2023. It is a particular priority for me to enable women to make more leadership positions in sport, and 40% reflects this prioritisation. I might be able to conclude my statement when I come back in. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister Chambers, and certainly what you have outlined and indeed what you have done yourself with regards to funding women's sport and organisations has been very, very impressive. But I suppose really the question here this morning that I have is, when we speak about women, we need a definition of that category, and we need to protect that category within women, within sports. Last year, I understand there was an FOI into the Sports Council asking about this, and they stated that not even discussed self-IDing males competing against female. So this is about safeguarding and protecting women's sports. We owe it to our females, competitives, the females that do compete competitively, who have put in years and years and years of their lives in training in their sports and protecting them, make sure that that is fair and competitive to them. So I ask you to reflect on this issue and ensure that providing this level and equal playing field remains a safe space for females going forward. So maybe you can address that issue this morning. Thank you.
Sharon Keogan, and the last year has been dominated, as we know, by amazing moments for women's sport, and our sportswomen very deservedly received many plaudits in the last months. I know your own county of Meath have had tremendous success in Croke Park, one of the best games, despite my county being on the losing side. But sportswomen like Rachel Blackmore, Leona Maguire, Kelly Harrington, Fionnuala McCormack, Amy Hunter and Emma Slevin, along with female players and many teams across all codes, provided great sporting moments for us all. All of these moments are inspiring the next generation of women and girls to take up sport, get out and get active, and be the next generation of sporting heroes who will inspire us in the years and decades ahead. And I want to acknowledge the work that is being done by Sport Ireland, the governing bodies and the network of local sports partnerships in developing programmes and contributing to the increase in the number of women and girls taking part in sport. And I expect that 2022 will be another great year for women's sport. And from a policy perspective, I'll be doing everything to ensure that our sportswomen are supported across the board. If you have direct questions for Sport Ireland, I'm sure they'll respond to you, but I'm not aware of the information regarding FOI. I'm not privy to that, but I'm sure they can revert to you. Thanks very much, Chair.